and welcome to Level Up Your Talents Abroad. I'm Guslandi here. In this episode today, we're going to meet with Laurie. You're going to learn how she became an entrepreneur here in Switzerland after working in corporate in the UK and also in Hong Kong. Don't forget to register for the VIP online live event for a Q&A with all the participants of this series. Then the second thing, follow us on our LinkedIn page. And the third, if you want also to contribute to that series and come for an interview, please email us. All the links are below. So hello, everyone. So today we welcome Laurie. Laurie moved to the UK straight after graduating from NEOMA back in 2012. She spent over 4 years there before being transferred to Hong Kong. After a couple of years in Hong Kong, she made the decision to move back to Europe and she picked Switzerland. Her husband followed her. Her partner followed her and then became her husband. Laurie has now been in Switzerland since 2018, where she and her husband had 3 babies, 2 girls, and they also created their own digital transformation agency called HiSci. Hi, Laurie.
Hello, Anne. Thank you very much for having me here.
Oh, that I'm really, really excited. It's a real pleasure. So today, we would like to explore the behind the scene because we often see the end result where you are today, and congratulations on that. But we often miss the process, the behind the scene, right? Mm-hmm. So what I would like to discuss with you today is what does it really take to level up your talents abroad? Something I really, really wonder is because it's always something when we're choosing a country where to go is like it's not an easy choice. So my first question is, when you decided to leave Hong Kong and move to Switzerland, what was the thinking process behind that move?
Well, that's a very good question. So basically, when I was in Hong Kong, and I think it will resonate with maybe a lot of people out there. My father had a stroke and then got ill, and I felt the need to be closer to my family. So I had left France, since 2012, and after NEOMA, after graduating from NEOMA. And I just realized at that point, I had actually the opportunity to potentially move to the US. And I've realized that some things were more important than keeping traveling the world and living, far from family. So I decided to get back to Europe. However, I still didn't want to miss out on that, living abroad. Living somewhere that wasn't where I was born and where potentially there was a very strong international community. I had kind of got used to it with London and Hong Kong. And so I decided to look at what would be, the places that would be potentially a candidate for me to move to. At that time, also my partner, who then became my husband, so he's British, so he didn't speak any French. So it was also very important to choose a place where French was not necessarily mandatory, which is not necessarily the case going back to Paris. So we were shortlisting some places, and my best friend, who's actually also done NEOMA, was already living in Geneva for a few years. And she really convinced me that I could move to Switzerland and keep this aspect of very sort of outdoor lifestyle that you have in Hong Kong, international community, still be close to France, be close to the UK as well. And that sounded very good. So we decided to move to Switzerland, and there was also a very good opportunity there in terms of work, because working in digital, Switzerland was still a fairly new market when it came to that. It wasn't saturated or, too advanced. So there were things that could be done there.
Okay. So we did mention it before, but maybe it's important to say that before you were working for Nissan in
Yes,
the UK and then in Hong Kong.
correct. Yes.
So during this first year, it's about reality check, right?
Yes.
There are some gaps. Usually, there's some gaps between what we have imagined, what your friend told you, and what is really going on. And this adaptation phase,
Mhm.
which usually is between 6 months and 1 year, is
Yes.
not always easy, right?
No.
So, could you please share what were the challenges, the professional or the personal challenges that were the most surprising to you?
Sure.
Maybe also, how did you overcome them?
Mhm.
And also, what were the nice surprises you discover in this country?
Yes. So, I mean, coming from Hong Kong, going to Geneva, that was a 180, you know,
Sure.
degree change. So I think at the at first and the first 6 months to a year were more challenges than necessarily nice surprises. Um, in terms of being polar opposite, you know, the two cities are very different. The convenience that you get in Hong Kong or in big cities in Asia, obviously, is huge. You know, I was there. So you said it right. I was also working on the client side. I was working for Nissan, and then when I moved to Geneva, I changed to move to the agency side. So not only I changed places, but I completely changed roles as well. And you know, in Hong Kong, I would happily work until 11 p.m. and then go out with my friends. And then I suddenly moved to Geneva, which is way more, let's say, family, formal city where at 11 p.m. most people are in bed, um, and nothing's open. So for me, the change in terms of just the city itself was huge, and I think you'd think I would have known that, but I guess, you know, before Hong Kong it was London, so for me it became like just a standard to live in a
Oh,
big city, and I was assuming Geneva was a big city like that. And so that was the first like reality check, I think. The second one is the also, and again maybe more so in London, even, you know, you have vice president, creative director, very like high level profile people who have tattoos on their faces and pink hair, and you know, and I mean, in Geneva, you come back to formality, I'd say, you know, it's very much more, everyone wears nice suits and clothes. Obviously, the industry of luxury being here, you know, there's a very strong, let's say, identity around that. So I took that first as a lack of creativity and lack of ability to be myself, I guess, you know, or just to, and it was actually until I met the right people. So that's the nice surprise. So then I realized, hang on a minute, you know, I met a lot of people coming from all over the world also in Geneva. It's still very international. And if you do meet the right people, then you find this creativity, you find these people who are out of the box, you know. You just need to look for them a bit more. They just don't come to you just as easily as in the other cities.
yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that, because it's a great awareness to have, to know where the gaps are.
Thank you.
Is there anything in terms of challenge that was really surprising about the Swiss culture?
Yes, so I guess when it comes to, I'd say, and maybe it's gonna sound a bit, you know, stereotypical, but when it comes to women at work, I had a few experience in Switzerland overall, not just Geneva, overall working in different cities there, of men being allowed to say things or call you young lady, or be very patronizing. Let's say, let's be honest. Um, and I wasn't used to that again. You know, I had the chance to live in a very, um, forward environment straight away from moving to London, where these sort of things are really not accepted.
But
um,
this
hanging
is a
out with
very egalitarian
exactly.
culture. So
Exactly. And I think, everything's in place there with HR, with it's a bit like, in America as well. There's no room for this sort of things. And very much so also in Asia where, it's not there's no place for that in the workplace. There are other things that are bad, but there's no necessarily gender-based bias and I was told after my first project here, I was told by a client, oh, well, you did a good job for a French and for a woman. And I was like, wow, that's like, I almost have to admire your, the fact that you can say that and actually think it's okay to say that. So I was really shocked. And I was just thinking, is that everywhere in Switzerland acceptable? Is it something that so I guess fighting this sort of behavior and those comments, which I've decided I was going to make it my fight. I was not going to let that happen. Was kind of a big deal because it is not something that necessarily other people around me were finding bad. They were just putting it on the culture, or it's here, like that. It's like that here. So it's not because it's like that you should accept it. And maybe because some of these people haven't actually expanded their horizon by working abroad or meeting other cultures, or they just didn't understand how wrong that was.
yeah, I mean, in their own frame of reference, that's
Mhm.
the norm. Like a big city is vibrant for you is the norm. For
Mhm.
them, it's the norm. Okay. So, okay, thank you for sharing that. It's really, really interesting. So fast forward
Mhm.
a couple of years, you have created your own business with your husband. And you became a mom as well. Not to say that it was during COVID period, that was the cherry on the cake. So, but if we leave that apart, because it was a very, very special moment in time, how would you describe the life of a mompreneur in Switzerland?
So I think Switzerland is not the most entrepreneur friendly country. The when I moved here, so I had my first daughter in 2018, and then my second one in 2020. And actually, um, until after my second daughter, there was no paternity leave. So when we didn't have our business and we were on a Swiss contract, typical Swiss contract, my husband had only 1 day of paternity leave. I
That's
mean,
true.
can you believe it? We're in Europe and there's 1 day and no one talks about it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, we don't know about
So
it.
we
Yeah.
always like looking at the other countries and saying how bad they are. But I mean, 1 day of paternity leave is actually outrageous. And I actually had a complication from first birth. So I didn't even have the support of my husband. I mean, he did take days off, but it wasn't a thing that he could be or should be there to help me. And for me, to allow women to be entrepreneurs or just to have a career anyway, you need to start with the men, right? You need to start with the role of the father, and that starts with paternity leave. That starts with giving the father the time to be involved and to be a support parent. But then again, that's that. And then there's the childcare issue as well. Childcare is so expensive here that most of the parents who work can barely afford it. And when they can, it's actually really hard to find a spot. So whether it's in crash, school starts at 5, so it's really late. So you can't just also find some compromise there. And obviously, if you don't give the opportunity to place your children somewhere, to have a village to help you raise them, you can't have the liberty to have a career or do whatever you want. So um, it's yes, it was difficult. So what you need is you need strong support from your partner for sure. You need someone who's going to be willing to take on the parenting role as much as you. And I know it sounds like, a generation, everyone does it now, but it's not true, because even if the person wants to be involved, everything is there not to make them involved, right? You need a salary, you need to have your partner work. So if they don't have time off, then they take it, and then you get less money at the end of the month, then you can't afford childcare. So it's a vicious circle that's made for really moms to take on that default role of parent.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a very, like, that's a big challenge here. Actually having my own business allowed me to then have more flexibility with my children, being more in charge of the time I dedicate for work, and the time I dedicate to my family. So that was also one, big win from having my own company.
Yeah, no, definitely. It seems like a lot of roadblocks when it's about uh, being a mom, having your own company is definitely a challenge. And okay, and I have to ask you that question. Why did you keep going? Like you could have just pack it up and go to another country and say, hey, it's easier in another country. So what keeps you going and overcome these roadblocks?
Yeah, so I have to credit that to my husband, actually, because I'm very much, not if it's hard I leave, but more of a, the grass could be greener somewhere else. Um, but we had already our daughter, who was, who was born in Switzerland. We were close to family, and then he made me realize it's not because we're going to go somewhere else that it's going to be easier. And then actually, if anything, we're starting from scratch all over again. um, and he really made me believe that, we couldn't make it here, and that it was going to be okay. So it's easier to be courageous when you're two of you. You said that. And I really like that. It's easier to, when you're in self-doubt, or to rely on someone to also give you that extra
Yeah,
lift that you need.
that's the support system,
Yeah,
right?
support system, definitely. So
Okay.
yes, and I'm glad we stuck to it.
Okay, awesome. Um, then I would like to ask you, so you actually run your business in Switzerland with your husband, who is British. You're French.
Well,
Uh, where your clients are Swiss, but not necessarily. What is it like to work in this multicultural environment? Is if there's one thing that stands out
mhm.
to you that you would like to share with us, what would it be?
So I always had the chance really to work in multicultural environment. That was really, I don't know if it's a chance or an opportunity I took anyway with Neoma. I did also an internship in Australia. So every time I've been looking for that multicultural environment, I've
Mhm.
never had, I've always wanted to get out of my comfort zone and meet other people and travel. But I'd say what I learned from it here, especially how, as I was saying, more formal Switzerland can be, is actually you can make it without having done a business school or an engineering school. Being French, I was told, I think from the age of 5, you need to have your baccalaureate, then you need to do a prepa, then you need to go to business school, because that's it, right? Or maybe you go to Sorbonne or whatever. But the let's say the path is already there for you, and it's kind of what you have to do if you want to succeed, because in terms of recruitment, and it's getting better now, with some influence of foreign world in France, which is great. But it's something I've learned, and especially, so my husband, for instance, doesn't have he has baccalaureate, but he doesn't have like a business school degree, right? He's made his own career. He learned by doing, he learned by experience. And it's something in the UK that you see a lot, right? Some people who have like a bachelor in philosophy and then they end up being like head of digital, it has nothing to do. Actually, that was the case of someone I worked with. So what it taught me is there's not just one path. And actually you don't have to have done that to get where you want to be. There's multiple ways to get where
Open door, right?
Yes, exactly. And actually it should be this way because then people think differently, have different approaches, and it's good for everything, for teamwork, for productivity. So we should encourage that, which I think is not necessarily the case when I see, my friends in France, where they work, where one tends to have the same profile, right? And the same background and the same even social class, right? Most of them. So I think it's not necessarily the multiculturalism, it's not different culture, it's the multi-profile aspect of people coming from those different places.
We're going to go to the last question. Thank you for all this insight. It's really, really super valuable. So looking back at your experience abroad as a whole, what soft skills have you developed over the years, and how do they play a role in your decisions today as a mother and a business owner to level up your talents daily?
Well, I think the biggest thing I've learned now, if I was taking myself back in 2012 when I left Neoma to now, is don't overthink it. It's not going to turn out the way you think it's going to turn out to be. I left school and I had a very clear vision of where I was going to be in 10 years time. And now it's 10 years time. And I'm nowhere near where I thought I would be.
Love that.
I was picturing myself, still probably not a mother, probably not married, had no interest in this business, in New York, whatever. I had like this vision of me, what I was going to be, coming out of the school. And then I'm in Switzerland with 2 children. It's like, what happened? And I'm so grateful actually that I'm where I am today. And I think it's just because I took life as it came, right? And I think the biggest learning is don't overthink it. I think I did, let's say, I didn't take some opportunities but younger, thinking that's not where I want to be, and like, it's not part of my vision. And actually, I think take the opportunity, whatever, it will take you somewhere else. And then if you want to go back to the vision you had or where you thought you wanted to be, there's always time, right? There's always time, or you can work extra hard, whatever, to just go back to where you thought you would be, if that's really what you want. But actually, maybe what you want is not what you think you want. And so
because you're evolving with the years, you also evolve.
Exactly, you're evolving. And so I think that don't overthink it, and it's, take the opportunities as they come. It's also helping me as a mother, because I will try not to have what I've just described before, this with my children, like, you have to graduate at this age, you have to take that path, you have to. I'm very much letting them be who they want to be at that moment, right? And we'll figure it out later. It's all good. If if you want to take a path that I didn't foresee, or I didn't think you'd take, it's fine. It's that, if that's what you want to do now, or if you have the opportunity to do it. So yeah, definitely that.
That's very inspiring. Thank you, Laurie. Definitely. I think sometimes we put too much pressure on ourselves, right, as moms. So thank you so much. To conclude, very quickly, let's imagine your best friend is coming to Switzerland with the family in a month. So what would be your top 3 piece of advice?
So I guess that depends where my best friend comes from, because the first thing would be definitely do come to Switzerland before moving here. experience the place before you move here. And I would try to give her some tips, right, of places to go, people to meet, so that they wouldn't be so surprised, when they get here about, oh wow, I had this picture of like, United Nations and international community super strong by a turquoise water and mountains, and then you've got then the reality of it. So I'd say come first, experience it, and take your family
You have
here.
to manage your expectations.
Yes, manage your expectations, exactly. The second thing is, if they're coming with children, definitely do some research in childcare, probably a year before you move here.
Okay.
Even to find someone to look after them, or a spot in the crash, but because this will change everything for them, right? If
Yeah.
you don't have a solution for your children, that would
It changes the family dynamic.
exactly, that changes the family dynamic. And if you can't find it, then adjust your how is that going to work for your family, right? So plan what the family will look like in terms of organization, right? And the third one, well, start eating some cheese, because there's going to be a lot of this here.
Yeah.
No, it's probably learn about where to go, where to travel here in Switzerland, because actually it is a beautiful country, and it's it's astonishing, right? The places you have here is wonderful. So do some also research on where you want to travel to make it more exciting for you to be here.
Because you're very central in Europe.
Exactly. So where I live, I'm just an hour away from France and an hour away from Italy, and most of the time I love going to Italy over the weekend just to eat some delicious food, right?
Yes.
Do that research, because that will make your life more exciting when you're over here.
Thank you so much, Laurie, for your time, for sharing your story, your insights, your challenges, everything. Really big thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
To all of you, sorry, to all of you who are listening to us. We hope that Laurie's story really inspired you, and that you find value in what she shared today.